Hey everybody, this is Joseph Pasek of barnburner.ca here on Zingo TV channel 250, filling in for our pal Ashley Van Octon. This is not the Ashley Van Octon show, even though Logan Lockhart shaved for the occasion. All right, so you don't look like a lady. All right, you still don't look like a lady, even though you look like 20 years younger, but you still don't look like a lady. But we're filling in here with Logan Lockhart and Mark Everett Kelly, who you saw briefly today with a great show with Candid Frank there. But we're going to discuss several other things here. First of all, I'll start off with you, Mark. As a Buffalo Bills fan, I hated Don Shula. It was squish the fish all the time. Logan squishes the fish when he saw Don Shula beating the Dallas Cowboys on Thanksgiving a few years back there. But give me your memories of Don Shula.
Yeah, you talk about that game. That game I vividly remember because it was in 1993, and the Jets were battling the Dolphins for the division. And the Dolphins actually wound up. That was the last game they won that year. They were 9-2, wound up losing the last 5 games of the regular season to miss the playoffs in a year that Marino was hurt. And I remember Jets safety Brian Washington said after that game he wanted to throw his TV set out the window because of how the Cowboys lost with Leon Lett kicking that ball and wind up costing them. But rare enough for snow in Texas, which never happens, never mind happening on Thanksgiving. But I'll never forget that game. Don Shula, to me, I never liked growing up because the Jets lost to them 14-0 in the AFC Championship game in 1982. A.J. Dewey, who only had like 5 interceptions in his career, had 3 of them in that game because Richard Todd thought he was wearing green, not white. And that's what I remember about Shula. But here's an interesting thing, too, is that with Marino, only one Super Bowl that he went to, and he never won a road game with Marino. The last time Don Shula won a playoff road game was in 1972 at Pittsburgh to get to the Super Bowl in a year they went undefeated. So he's someone that had success, but in 1992, the Bills beat them in the AFC Championship game. 1985, the Patriots beat them in the AFC Championship game. So a lot of things I thought toward the end of his career that he kind of held on. But again, only 2 losing seasons at Miami. Amazing.
And of course, I don't have to tell you, the only team went perfect in the National Football League, right? So Miami there. Logan, you're a little bit younger. You like Dallas. You're not like who Bills and Miami. That was a big time rivalry in the early 90s, late 80s, early 90s. But give me your thoughts about Don Shula, who, by the way, passed away today at the age of 90.
Yeah, and Mark alluded to it at the end, how there was only 2 losing seasons and in 26 seasons. So think about the longevity for a second here. He resigns in 1995 as the Dolphins head coach, who, by the way, he coached the Baltimore Colts before that. The team he coached and also played for, he was defensive back. He played for the Colts from 53 to 63, and the Colts were his first coaching job. But with the Dolphins, 26 seasons. He resigns in 1995. And out of those 26 seasons, 24 of them are winning seasons. 24. It's remarkable. The longevity is unbelievable. I was talking about it on the show earlier, how it's almost Tom Landry-esque to have that many seasons of consistency under your belt, and Shula's got it. I mean, only 2 losing seasons. It's unbelievable. He's got a .665 winning percentage as a coach. That includes both the Baltimore and Miami days. But of course, Joe, like you said, in 72, one of the greatest teams ever. It's a team, it's before my time, but I can tell you that when you grow up watching football, it's the team that you hear about first, the 72 Dolphins, the only team really to go perfect. And of course, the 2007 Patriots almost had something to say about that, but couldn't close the deal. And of course, in 72, en route to the Super Bowl, they beat Washington. And I mean, how can you forget it?
Keep in mind, Logan, too, though he had 26 seasons, only 2 were losing. He did have 4 seasons where they were 500. So, yeah, okay.
Yeah, well, that's Don Shula, great coach for Miami Dolphins. Passing away at the age of 90. So let's get to some other NFL news here. It looks like the schedule is going to come out, and they're not going to play any not North American games this season. And I'm going to leave it to Frank and Logan. I have hopefully potentially a good guy to come on here. So you guys talk. I'm going to cut out for a second or two, and I'll be back hopefully with a major guy. Let's see if I can pull some strings here. All right.
Okay.
So go ahead.
What do you think, Logan? Is he maybe Bruce Smith? I don't know. I mean, who could we possibly have on? Mark Duper? Mark Clayton?
Well, I mean, Roger Staubach. How about that? Speaking of Tom Landry, I think there'd be a bit of a connection there.
Yeah. Although
Captain
Landry
America,
would probably have to get back from the dead, but
right, Captain America himself. You never know; he can come on at any time. The great Roger Staubach. Now, you know, with the international thing, no surprise there.
Mhm.
You know, I mean, we can see it coming with the schedule now, but what we have to keep in mind is Thursday's a big day. The NFL is releasing the schedule on Thursday, and there's going to be multiple contingency plans within the schedule. Of course, going with the pace of the virus, right? We could see the season starting in October, Mark, and there would be no bye weeks. We would have no bye between the conference championship and the Super Bowl, and the Super Bowl would be played in late February. So, you know, I think Thursday's a big day when we talk about the schedule, but the international thing is no surprise to me.
Yeah.
I'm trying to, I just got off the phone with Dan Marino. We're going to, he says he has a short meeting. He's a little bit shaken up, and he has a short meeting, and we'll try to endeavor to get Dan Marino here if we can. If we can't, it's understandable, but he's very shaken up there. That's why I had to leave. It was, I tried to get him before 3:00 here, but you know, unfortunately, when dealing with stuff like that. So, yeah, I'm sorry about that. But you know, like I said, I believe the schedule comes out on Thursday, and it doesn't look like, you know, some states and provinces are opening up slowly. But I don't think we're going to see in NFL. All stadiums are 70, 80,000 fans. I don't think we're going to see that this season. Mark?
Well, you saw that on Good Morning America, one of the Dolphins CEOs said that they have a coronavirus plan in place, how they were going to bring the people into the stadium, how they were going to let them out of the stadium, how they were going to let them order, where they were going to be able to pick it up from, where they ordered food. So they were talking about having these plans in place. But like Frank and I were talking about on our show, until there is a vaccine, people aren't going to really feel comfortable going somewhere in a group of people. As a whole, I believe there are people that want to get back to society and that just get kind of sick of this kind of staying in their home. But whenever the unknown is involved, there's a little bit of fear, and there's still unknown in this with this virus. So until there is a vaccine that says, okay, you are 100% fine, you will not get this disease, asking people to corroborate anywhere where there's going to be a group of people, I think is going to be something that there could be unknown circumstances that could happen that would cause something where maybe they're not prepared for.
Yeah, well, it should be interesting to see. Of course, they were having games scheduled for London. Every year they go to London, Mexico City, and no games. Probably the players like it. Who wants to travel now, right? So players like it in the NFL. And, you know, we're already in May. So, you know, training camps start in end of June, July. So let's see what you know, what could happen here, because, you know, the draft's just coming, and this week they're going to make news. Remember, first game is going to go to Kansas City. And you know who's supposed to play Kansas City this year? Some team in Florida called the Tampa Bay Buccaneers. Could we see the first game of the season? The Tampa Bay Buccaneers, led by, well, Tom Brady, who looks like Logan now without the, you know, goatee and all that. But, you know, Tampa with Kansas City in first game. What would you think, Logan, of that?
Well, I think, first of all, we have to acknowledge how you mentioned the schedule coming up Thursday. Lots of primetime games I would anticipate coming for the Buccaneers, which is something we haven't seen in a very long time. Now, I think it'd be a great opening to the season. Of course, you always got to start the season. You know, you got the Super Bowl champs, so Kansas City. So if you got, I don't know where that game would be played, actually. I haven't looked at that, but if it would be in Kansas City, the last time Tom Brady was in Kansas City, Mark. AFC Championship game, 2018, that infamous overtime game when the Chiefs, it was just such a wild game, and it went to overtime, and the Pats, of course, won to advance the Super Bowl en route to beat the Rams. That would be quite a rematch. Now, I know the Chiefs and Patriots played last year, but it was in Foxborough. But for Brady to return to Kansas City since that AFC Championship game and do it with a team that isn't the Patriots, that is one way to kick off an NFL season.
But that game will be at Tampa Bay, though, so they wouldn't have to worry about it being in Kansas City. But
okay.
I like the 2018 championship game. Andy Reid had a history of losing home championship games. Him and Bill Cowher, both with 4 AFC championship game losses at home, the most for NFL head coaches. And then you have Shula and George Seifert with 2 underneath them. So, we're talking about Don Shula, but Reid overcame that this year, okay? And I thought the biggest game for Kansas City this year was against Houston. They're down 21-0 or 24-0, 21-0 before you know it. And they not only come back, but they blow them out of the water. It gave Mahomes that confidence that maybe if there was any, if you remember that championship game, there were about 3 or 4 plays where if Kansas City would have made, including one that got turned back because of a penalty where they intercepted Brady, they would have won that game. Okay. To me, it reminded me a lot of, I don't know if you remember this, but in 2006, the Patriots played the Chargers with Marty Schottenheimer and Phillip Rivers. And the Chargers were 14-2 or 13-3 that year. And the Chargers had a play where they caused a fumble and it would have ended the game. And then they fumbled it back to the Patriots. And the Patriots went on to win that game and then lose the championship game to the Colts and Peyton Manning, where they came back from 21-3. But that was kind of like that moment for Kansas City. San Diego didn't learn. The next year, they went out and lost the championship game to the Patriots. And you've never heard from Phillip Rivers again after that. And then the Chiefs were able to then turn that and use that this year. And when they got behind in the playoffs, they didn't panic. They had that experience behind them, and they used it to go on and win Super Bowl.
I think that's a great comparison with those Chargers teams in the mid-2000s and seeing how you took Kansas City there and how they completely had a different mentality. I mean, those Chargers teams were loaded on both sides of the ball. Tomlinson was as good as it gets in terms of a back there. And yeah, those were their opportunities. 2006, 2007, those were great teams. And the Patriots crushed their dreams. And when you look at the Phillip Rivers era in San Diego / LA, those are the 2 seasons right there you point at. In Kansas City, completely different. They had the tough loss against New England. They're in a similar situation against Houston where they have to fight adversity, and they did it this time.
And another really bad loss to Phillip Rivers was in 2009 when they lost to the Jets in the divisional round. I believe they were 14-2 that year. The Jets wound up going to the championship game, losing to the Colts. That was a very Jet team that should have not beat them. Mark Sanchez, a quarterback who's won 4 road playoff games. There's something wrong when Mark Sanchez won 4 road playoff games. Dan Marino's only won 1.
All right, so let's switch the gear here from the NFL to the NBA, specifically The Last Dance. I know, Mark, you probably watched it. Logan was busy shaving his goatee, so I don't know if, Logan, you watched it or anything.
You're a little obsessed with that, Joe. It's starting to bother me now.
Well, you got a goatee. You don't shave it. Look, he looks like, I don't know, he's 24, 25. He looks like 13 now. Come on.
I usually watch it at about 4:30, 5 o'clock. So I'll see it in about an hour and a half or so on Monday. That's when I watch it.
All right. So episodes 5 and 6, especially the Dream Team. Mark, you're based out of US and all that. The Dream Team in 25, 28 years ago, when you look back at that, was that like, we don't know what's going to happen 28 years later, right? But at that time, was that the best team you ever seen? And what was interesting to me, they were talking about Isaiah Thomas. Why wasn't he on the team?
Yeah, what I remember about that is how mad I was as a 14-year-old when they lost. And David Robinson was on that 88 team. David Robinson, Charles Smith, losing in the Olympics in 88 in Seoul to Russia. And that really angered me. And I think it angered most people. Hey, why aren't we sending our best? And even 4 years before that, you had the Olympians. They had Wayman Tisdale, they had Chris Mullin, they had Patrick Ewing, and of course, Michael Jordan, who the head coach of that team was Bobby Knight. And Bobby Knight telling the Blazers, look, I don't care if you need a center, put Jordan at center. Okay, that's how good Jordan is. And him coming into the NBA and dominating after that point. But in 92, I think everyone was ready for that. And Isaiah not being there didn't seem right to those who followed the NBA. But like they said in the documentary, he had problems with Bird. He had problems with Magic. He had problems with Jordan. And they already did the week before where he walked off the court. I remember that. I thought it was a little low class, but I understood why it happened because the Celtics essentially did the same thing to them. However, when you talk about the Dream Team and the effect it had on people, I did an interview with this guy, Jim O'Connell, who was an AP Hall of Fame writer a couple of years ago. And Jim followed that team. He was with the team and he did interviews. And to me, and he loved every second of it. He told me a story where Magic Johnson was guarding one of the Brazilian players, and the Brazilian player poses at one point so a guy on the bench can take a picture of him with Magic Johnson guarding him. I mean, that's how much these players looked up to them. And that tournament of the Americas they had up in Portland before, to qualify for the Olympics was like a coronation before the coronation. And everyone saying, hey, look at what we have here. And probably the only thing that people didn't understand is why Christian Laettner was on the team, which we later found out they wanted one college player, but all the other guys, 11 of them in the Hall of Fame. The practices, you saw the film last night with Magic Johnson throwing the ball into the stands, how mad he was with the competition. All that stuff is what made that team so great.
And what was more interesting, and I couldn't believe it, and everybody should go out because it's The Last Dance is the Chicago Bulls Michael Jordan documentary. Who do you see on there? Probably the last time he talks publicly, Kobe Bryant. Kobe Bryant and Mark, I was surprised at watching this because he was saying if it wasn't for Michael Jordan, he wouldn't be who he is or who he was. Speak about that. Like, that was surprising to see, especially, I think, so soon after his tragic passing.
Yeah, I remember the 98 All-Star game. It was at Madison Square Garden. I had been waiting, being a Knicks fan, waiting for the All-Star game to be at the Garden because the Knicks had All-Stars all through the 90s, whether it was Oakley or Starks or Ewing especially. And then 98, they had Allen Houston join the team. So I felt like finally we'll get to see the Knicks play with some of their All-Stars. The Knicks had no All-Stars in that game because Ewing was hurt. Jason Williams was a representative for the Nets. If you remember, Jason Williams, the one who wound up getting booked for murder a little while later. That was the tri-state representative. But that All-Star game was about Kobe and Michael. And you saw a little behind the scenes what it became. And even at that time, you didn't know what Kobe was going to become and how he would stand up to Shaq and how he would take this leadership, all that stuff. That the reason why they traded him. Remember, they traded him for Vlade Divac, which was a pretty good player for the Lakers. Okay, and they got him, turned their franchise around to where they started winning titles again. And you saw a lot of Kobe's game had to do with kind of taking after Michael and looking at what Michael did. To me, a lot of their mannerisms were exactly the same.
I'm going to ask Logan, but I'll go to you, Mark, first. I'll ask Logan this after. Don't you feel like you should be in a golfing game with Michael Jordan? I could be rich. I could be rich if I'm in a golfing game with Michael Jordan. I made $40 on this hole. I made $200 on that hole. I made $2 million on, I wish I could be golfing with Michael Jordan.
Well, maybe you're a good golfer, which I'm not, so I wouldn't make any money with him. What I would like to do is be the security guy who was flipping the coins against the wall. Yeah. Maybe I would have a better chance at that.
All right, Logan.
Would I like to go golfing with Michael Jordan? Of course I would. I mean,
imagine the stories.
What's that?
Imagine the stories.
Yeah, you know what? It's funny with athletes sometimes because golf is like this sport that it seems like everyone, no matter what sport you play, golf is something that everyone can get together and share an interest in. So I've always found it interesting when you cross sports together, especially in hockey, but hockey, basketball, football, baseball. Guys just love golfing. And I bet you there's stories between these athletes, these superstars that we all know have gotten together. The stories are probably unbelievable, Mark. I haven't heard too many of them, but I can just imagine.
So Mark, let me ask you this. I'll go to Mark and then Logan here. Everybody talks about the Bulls 6 in a row, Michael, and everything like that. But of the 6 teams they beat, who would you say is the best team of
Okay.
the 6 teams they beat?
Now look, I'm going to take things from a little different level. Okay. Bulls only played 2 7-game series during that run. One was in 92 against the Knicks, and another was in 98 against the Pacers. I thought the Pacer team they beat 98 was very good. The Knicks team in 93, if you remember, the Knicks had home court advantage against them in 93 in the Eastern Conference Finals. They win
2-0.
1 and 2 with Starks dunking in game 2. And then Jordan in game 4 has a 54-point game on Memorial Day. I'll never forget that. And then I was at game 5 at the Garden when Charles Smith missed those shots. And the train ride home from Madison Square Garden was like a dirge. People were acting like somebody died because we knew the series was over and that Chicago was going to beat them. And again, you got to remember, they lost to the Bulls in 89, in 91, 92, and now in 93 again. And they barely beat them the next year without Jordan. So that was a very good team. Of the teams that beat in the finals, the 93 Suns were very good too. Barkley and Danny Ainge, Kevin Johnson, Tom Chambers, deep bench, Paul Westphal as a head coach. The Sonics in 96 always thought a little bit different, more defensive minded. Kemp wasn't as explosive. Peyton had a little limit to his game. There was nobody that could match up Jordan offensively. And the Jazz in 97, 98, many people, and Isaiah Thomas himself has said, he thought the weak link on that team was Malone. Not because Malone was a bad player, but at the end of the game, his inability to make free throws. And you remember in game 1 of the 97 series, him missing 2 big free throws and Scottie Pippen telling him, hey, the mailman don't deliver on Sundays.
And Logan, what do you think?
I think of the Jazz for sure. When I think of the 90s and who the Bulls beat, they lose in 97, right? And they come back the next year in 98. And you're thinking that this is finally the year for the Jazz, coached by Jerry Sloan. It's a seriously good team. We don't even have to begin about John Stockton and what he did for the point guard position. The mailman, of course, the inability to hit free throws at the end, huge. At the same time, this is a guy who averaged 27 points a game. Mm-hmm. And let's not forget, there were role guys on the team. Jeff Hornacek, another one. 62 wins for the Jazz in 98. They might have been the best team not to win an NBA championship in history. I mean, forget the Bulls and who they beat. I mean, the Jazz are up there with one of these iconic teams. I mean, it's a classic team, really, in 97 and 98, but particularly 98, because they had the opportunity to redeem themselves from 97. So you thought that was the chance. And they couldn't even get it to a game 7, unfortunately.
I've just received a text from Dan Marino. He unfortunately will not be able to. I'll read you. It says, "Hi, Jolts," because that's nickname here, Jolts. Too saddened. I'd rather not do it today. It's too early. Let's hope we could do it in the next few weeks. Thanks a lot for thinking of me. So that's, and he goes on to say other stuff, but that's Dan Marino there also. But let's get back to the NBA and another friend of mine, Tracy Murray, who's good friend, Shaquille O'Neal, has gone on record and said there's several NBA teams up for sale. And in fact, one team within the next year or two will move to Vegas. I say this because now there's a new proposal that, and Mark, maybe you can talk about this, that they're building at Mandalay Bay in Las Vegas, 25, 26 courts, that if they continue the season, it will be in Las Vegas. First of all, what do you think of Shaq's proclamation that there are several teams, NBA teams up for sale? And what do you think? Do you think NBA could play in Vegas to conclude this year?
Well, I think the reason why some of those teams are up for sale, I guess, is what's going on in the world today. I mean, nobody's making any money right now. So why wouldn't there be a lot of teams up for sale? I'm sure you're going to see that in other sports. I mean, just look at what's going on with Major League Baseball. They're still trying to negotiate with the players on whether or not the players are going to get their salary for the season. The players union, is probably the strongest union in the world. So I think we might see more of that. How is it going to be played in Vegas? That to me is, I don't know, because the Raiders are the first professional team really to go there, even though you could say like the running Rebels in the 90s, maybe they were the first professional team, who knows? But I think that where you have so much at stake there with gambling and kind of like the reason why there wasn't sports teams there for a long time. Now that if we have to run a league from there, that is going to be very interesting to see. And I have no idea what to expect from that or what ramifications it would have.
All right, Logan.
It's fascinating for sure. I think it's inevitable though, when you talk about Vegas now becoming the sports city, and not just for gambling, having teams. And Mark, like you said, it's a little different when there's actually a team in that city as opposed to just the gambling portion of that. I heard this today, what Shaq was saying, and apparently the Spurs ownership group reportedly put a minority stake up for sale, which is interesting. There was no clarification on whether the Spurs were one of these teams. San Antonio, they're the third team in Texas in a way. When you talk about a team in Vegas, like I said, I think it's inevitable. It's going to happen. You have the Golden Knights starting there in 2017, which already happened, and the Raiders now, which seems like it's going to be a hit as well. The stadium's looking sharp as ever. It's going to be really interesting. Vegas is now molding into this sports city in America, and I think it's a great thing. It's well-deserved. Vegas is not, they have this reputation of being just this gambling city. Las Vegas, Nevada, and what's going on in the state around there, a lot of good sports fans, and they do deserve teams. So I think it's inevitable for the NBA to go there.
Well, I think the NBA will go there. And of course, NHL is there. And NFL is there. So what does that leave? Major League Baseball. Major League Baseball. And there's always problems in Oakland. Let's face it. Okay. Oakland, close by. Vegas, Major League Baseball. There's, the perception, you heard it months ago, that Tampa and Montreal are going to be working together or whatever. But Vegas is right there. And I'll tell you what, hockey's already there. Football's already there. We're talking basketball. It's summer league is already there. So baseball, it's just a question of time, right, Mark?
Yeah, I agree. I mean, it's just a matter of time. They've been minor league teams there. I know the Mets had a minor league team there for a number of years. There was problems with their pitching, the pitching numbers were always a little inflated out there. So there, I apologize. I forgot about the Vegas Knights. They joined Vegas before the Raiders did. So, and they had make the finals their first season. I always thought that San Jose and Anaheim must be so angry that they've been trying for all these years, and even the Blues back then, and then here in Vegas, their first year go right to the finals.
Well, Maple Leafs, 53 years. May 2nd was 53-year anniversary.
Yeah.
Logan wasn't even born. Never mind. I wasn't even born. You weren't even born. 53, never. All right, but like Las Vegas, and let's face it, and I'm going to say, people were saying to me, are they going to play? Am I mistaken? The new Vegas Stadium, the home of the Raiders, their turf comes in and out. You could put a baseball turf in there. Mark?
Yeah, I'm sure you could. I mean, like these new stadiums, you could do anything in. I mean, you could host a convention. You could have, a rock concert. You could do just about anything. These things are the closest things to perfection I've seen. What gets me annoyed is that here in New Jersey with the Jets and Giants, they combine on a stadium that's like 10 times the size of the old Meadowlands, and they make it an outdoor stadium. Everything now is these space-aged, kind of like you could see the eye and it closes and opens back up. And even, anywhere else in the world, they're building these exotic stadiums, and we get this in Jersey. It just says something a little bit, about the working man in Jersey. They like things simple.
All right. So, Logan, I'll start with you. Let's get to the National Hockey League. The Toronto Maple Leafs have signed the KHL's top scoring defenseman, Mikko Lehtinen, to a 1-year deal. Now, I'm going to say this. Nobody has talked about this. I know, Mark, you want to talk about the Islanders, but we'll talk about the Islanders. But the Maple Leafs, okay? Morgan Riley, left-handed defenseman, all right? everybody except for Justin Hall, because I'm not going to say Tyson Berry because he's a free agent and all that. Everybody on the Leafs signed past next year are left-handed defensemen. How big of a trouble is that?
Well, it depends on who you are. I know that Mike Babcock, who coached this team up until November, was a big proponent of having a left-handed shot defenseman and a right-handed shot defenseman. You see it when he was coaching Team Canada. It was a must for him. There were players on that Team Canada team that may have not been the best defenseman in this country, but they were on the team just for that. And I wonder if Sheldon Keefe, who's taken over now and he's gotten his feet wet, he's had a bunch of games under his belt, I wonder if he cares as much, because Joe, when Babcock was in town, that was a constant conversation in this city. It was, well, what hand does he shoot and can he fit in? I wonder if Dubas and Keefe have the same just care for it. I don't know. This kid Lettinen, who can really slot in, if Barry's going to leave, this kid Lettinen, who's got 49 points in 60 games in the KHL, he's an offensive guy. He can slot right in on the power play. No questions asked. Right-hand shot or left-hand shot, I don't know how much they care anymore. And if it's up to me, I just want the best guys on the ice. Now, if this guy can keep the puck out of the Leafs net, I think it's okay. Okay, they'll make it work. Okay, forget the shots.
See, he's spoken like a true Maple Leaf fan, a youngster, true Maple Leaf fan. He wants to see Lord Stanley down Bay Street here in Toronto. But Mark, you're in New York. New York got the Rangers, Islanders, New Jersey Devils. Out of those three teams right now, who would you say is the best team? Who has the best shot of going to the playoffs and capturing Lord Stanley's mug?
Well, I mean, unluckily for the Islanders, that when the season ended the way it did, the Islanders were on the outside looking in for the first time this year. They had a great run early in the year where they had 17 games where they were undefeated. They play a defensive system under Barry Trotz. They got a bunch of, I would say, it makes you mediocre in that system because you aren't like geared for scoring. Although the players that they have, whether it's Nelson or the young kid that took over for Tavares as their leading scorer, his name is escaping me right now. They have a lot of quality at a lot of different positions. They have a lot of depth, but they don't really have a lights out scorer where that they can depend on in the clutch. And I think that will eventually cost them. But they're getting a goaltender next year. You talked about from Russia. The Islanders are getting theirs from Russia, who's one of the best in the world. I think that'll open up the system a little bit, allow them to take more chances offensively. You know, because the year before Trotz got there, the Islanders averaged about 4.5 goals a game, so they can score. It's just their system's not allowing them to right now. But when you look at the Rangers really came on toward the end. They have a lot of young talent. They have a good young goaltending tandem getting ready to take over for Lundqvist. Eventually, I think the Rangers will be back to where they were consistently a playoff contender. The Devils are taking a little bit of a rebuild, so they are where they are. But you got to remember the last time that the Leafs made the conference finals, they did have Dmitry Yushkevich. So maybe this means something for right-handed defensemen.
Dmitry Yushkevich. Those are the good old days. You didn't even interview Dmitry Yushkevich. This is what he said. Dmitry, tell me how was the game? Good. Can you elaborate? Yeah, but I'm not going to. Next question. That's how he used to do the interviews. All right. So Dmitry Yushkevich, God love him, but let's hope every sport is back. Now, let me ask you, Logan, the youngster here. Which sport do you think is going to come back first? And which sport? Give me a timeline.
If I was a betting man, I'd go Major League Baseball. I mean, look, with the NHL and NBA, they got a little leeway in terms of, okay, well, we just got to conclude our season by doing the playoffs and we'll reward a champion. With Major League Baseball, I think that, you got to get the ball rolling here. Now, if the timeline is 4th of July, that's fine. You can start on 4th of July that weekend. I think if I was a betting man, I'd go Major League Baseball. I think you can do the games. If you go spring training, I know they're talking about bringing the teams back home now, but if that idea goes through, and Mark, I want to hear what you think about this too. If the spring training idea, putting the teams in their spring training facilities and acting that as their home, I think you can speed up the process a bit.
Yeah, I think of the two proposals, that one, and there's another proposal where they have 3 10-team divisions. I think is another interesting one. I don't like 3 10-team divisions. To me, is a little bit of a reach. I think that the whole idea of them doing that, where they stay in Florida and Arizona, is because they'll be close to each other. So if there's anything that happens, if people need to be quarantined, they'll have a system in place where they're not traveling across the country. So I think that probably works out a little bit better. What Frank and I were talking about on his show last week, which I think is really going to be interesting, is the use of the DH that they are going to apply to everybody. As a National League fan, I don't like that. Like if I'm playing a video game, yeah, I love it. I could put anybody and not have to worry about my pitcher hitting, because all my pitchers go 9 innings in my video games, just let you know. But I think
that's why you lose.
What we're doing now is you have to work with what they're giving us, and if there's still that much of an unknown, I do think that there is something that will help ordinary people have something else to focus on, which is why it's important sports do come back if they can come back. And that scenario where you have 5-team divisions, you have your teams in Florida, your teams in Arizona, I think that one is a lot more doable than the 3 10-team divisions. And I'd like to see the Mets and Yankees in the same division and the Braves out of the division, but it doesn't look like, to me, the more feasible is the one that you talked about with the spring training teams staying where they are.
So, Mark, baseball, you think is going to be the first one? Because I'm telling you, you're technically right, but you're technically wrong, Logan. Go ahead. I'll tell you. I have inside information right now given to me which one is the first one. This has just broke right now.
Inside information. Information. That was a Foreigner album back in the 80s. I think that, though, look, basketball and NHL, at least basketball, is talking about finishing their season, that they are determined to have a champion. If that's the case, I can't see any way that basketball and hockey doesn't come back first, because they need, if they do, they're on a whole different timeline than baseball is. Who, again, even if they come back by July 4th, there's a lot of different things they're going to have to do as far as rosters being extended, having 40 men available, playing games one right after the other. I think that's a little more doable than the NHL and NBA. If they delay it longer and longer, they're not going to be able to crown a champion. I just don't see how. They talk about having the season start in December now, next year. I don't know. I don't like if they continue to wait. And, so if one sport does come back, I would see either hockey or basketball.
You're wrong. It's the Korean Baseball League. The Korean Baseball League. But get the
Korean Baseball League. Okay. Well,
they signed a deal with ESPN. But the truth, and only I could say this, is AEW, All Elite Wrestling. They're going to have fans on Wednesday, tomorrow. Fans not everybody. Fans are allowed in attendance Wednesday for All Elite Wrestling. That's breaking news. I just got it from a wrestler. How do you like that, Logan? I'm breaking news here. Well, you want to know what other breaking news, Mark?
Did you say breaking news or breaking wind?
No, that I leave to Wordle. But breaking news: Logan shaved. See,
I think that's a little more notable. Yeah, no. You mentioned the Korean Baseball League, so ESPN, they're now going to air 6 games a week, and the first one's tomorrow at 1 a.m. It's the season opener.
I want a full update, Logan. I want a full update on the new show tomorrow when you come in, okay? On the sports.
Oh my God.
I went through it today on the show. Because they broke it. They're 6 games a week. It's pretty substantial. So if you're missing baseball, you got your fix pretty good.
Yeah, and I want you to announce the players and everything. Like he went 2 out of 3 for Yamaguchi. Come on. Mm-hmm. I need you to because I know Eric, the degenerate gambler he is, he's betting the Korean Baseball League.
Well, they're going to be calling the game. I saw a tweet from Jeff Passan today. They got like
Jeff Passan. Wow.
They're going to be sending people, I think. I don't know. Virtually, of course. I don't know what the deal is. It'll be very interesting, though.
Mark wants to apply for that job.
I worked with Jeff.
Yeah, no, Jeff's great. I've never met him, but I see his reporting. I think it's fantastic. I thought that was interesting. He was talking about saying, yeah, we're airing 6 games a week.
Why not?
Okay, so now let me ask you guys this. You talked about, playing the playoffs, continuing, has to be a champion and all that. Do you guys really care now? Since we're out of sports for what, 2 months already, do you really care that NBA or Stanley Cup is not given? Because we're living without sports already for 2.5 months. Mark.
Do I care? Yes, I do care because number one, I think that seeing what they come back with to me will be unique. And just like in NFL, in 1982, they went to a football tournament where you had AFC, NFC, all the teams together, and then it went 1-8 and how they seeded. Okay, top 4 teams got home games. Everybody had to play all 3 rounds. Okay, so it'll be fun to see what they come up with because I think that it's a unique situation. So why not have fun with it? Get some interest back, get some fans back. That is what I'm looking forward to. I think they can come up with a creative way where everybody be involved, and it could, maybe it won't be the best or the most legit champion, but still, you're going to have a team that will have to apply to whatever the rules there are, and then eventually be the one standing. So regardless, it'll happen in a way that we've never seen before, which I think makes it very interesting to the fans and fan base.
Well, and the NBA, NHL, they're talking about 2014 playoff. So, but the NBA, they're talking about everybody. And if they go by what the standings were prior to this COVID thing, 32 versus 1. Golden State was 32. Milwaukee was number 1. Golden State comes back with Steph Curry, Klay Thompson, and everybody healthy against Milwaukee. I like Golden State there.
Are they going to be healthy though? I mean, Klay Thompson, you could probably be out a little bit.
And the big question is, right now, if it stays the way, like what I just said, the Raptors, this for Logan, would have to play the Brooklyn Nets with possibly KD.
Kenny Atkinson.
Back. How about that, Logan? Any chance for the reigning, where's Paul Heyman, champions to be retained there if they're playing KD and, Brooklyn getting a full squad?
Well, you know what? I mean, with the Raptors, you don't like to count them out because they just seem so resilient, especially this year. Without Kawhi, there's a huge chip on that team's shoulder. That's for sure. But, Joe, like you're saying, with the 2014 playoff thing, if it's up to me, I'm putting less teams in as opposed to more. I don't think we should be throwing these teams in. I mean, there's just not enough time now. If we're going to reward a champion, let's get the best of the best.
Why they're doing it in the National Hockey League is because the playoffs, there's 6 teams within 2 or 3 points with each other. That's, to be fair, they're going to make it fair for those guys.
I understand.
Games at hand too. That's why the games at hand are why they would put those teams in, because they haven't played yet.
Absolutely. I just think there's got to be a point that someone's going to be disappointed. Okay, these are tough circumstances. Not everyone can be happy here. I think there's going to come a point where we got to turn to teams and say, too bad, so sad, because look, we don't got time now to start throwing everyone in and playing more games. Look, we got to put the best of the best. We got to reward a champion. We just played a season. We need to put the best of the best. I'm sorry that you were a borderline fringe playoff team all year. The COVID-19 came up. Okay, so you know what? Your season's over, and we'll see you in December.
So
I like it, Logan. I don't agree with it, but I like it.
Let me ask you, if the Maple Leafs win the Stanley Cup, does anybody in Toronto and Canada care that there's COVID-19? We won the Stanley Cup. You may not see it for the rest of your life.
I heard that Brian Burke, he said there's a proposal that they should put 8 teams in the playoffs, and that's the end of the story. At this point, depending on the timeline and the schedule, that's how little it might have to be. 24, okay, you know what? 18, 20, fine. 24. That was, it wasn't that long ago when there were 24 teams in the NHL in like 1998 or something. It wasn't that long ago. We're going to throw the whole league in the playoffs?
There was a point where there was 21 and 16 of them made the playoffs.
That's right.
What's more interesting is the NHL wants to have their draft before they restart the season. So who's going to pick 1, 2, 3, 4, 5?
Well, you can figure that out easily. I mean, you can think of a million ideas.
Because they're putting all the teams in a pot, and then the greater chances of, like, Detroit getting the first pick. But technically, St. Louis if they get the balls right, the Stanley Cup champions could get the #1 pick.
Well, they did the same thing in 2005 when the
Yeah.
lockout year in 04-05, Sidney Crosby was the #1
That's right.
overall pick. They kind of have to do the same thing. So,
Right.
in theory, the defending Stanley Cup champions, Tampa Bay Lightning, that year in 2004, they in theory could have had Sidney Crosby. Now their chances were lower, and Pittsburgh got the #1 pick. Anaheim was second, selected Bobby Ryan. But the point is that we've seen something like this before. I think they might have to go with that.
Very good.
Let's hope. And what are they going to do for basketball too? Like basketball now, these guys and you look at Zion Williamson. He did not really start the year and did not play, and he was getting, healthy when it was going down. Imagine like Zion Williamson, because New Orleans was playing good when everything was falling down here.
Yeah, I think Zion, just this freak of nature that he is, you saw what he was like in college and high school and all these amazing videos of him dunking and leaping and, and just even watching the NFL draft, the guys like Mekhi Becton, who's 6'5", 360 and can, dunk standing underneath a basket. So athletes are getting more and more freakish. But I think everybody at this point has gotten time off. Their bodies are healing. All the scrapes and injuries and bumps and bruises that they have during the regular season are all kind of, healed now. So look, I like what Logan says. Yeah, you want the best. You don't want a cheap champion, okay? But you are getting teams that should be where they were when the regular season ended as far as talent, and eventually the cream will rise to the top. I don't think there's really anything wrong with giving the Knicks or whoever is so low on the totem pole that they will be a one and done, or however many games that they go best of 3 in the first round, because the best team will win, and then we'll go from there. It'll be like the NCAA tournament.
Yeah. All right. So let's see. If let's say they have 24 teams in hockey, 24 teams in basketball, which is more exciting?
Well, hockey for sure. I think the parity is just that much greater. I mean, you had the Orlando Magic, who I think were about 6 games under 500 in the 8th seed in the East. Okay, 6 games under 500. So, if you look at that in hockey, you have much better teams on the fringe. I mean, you talk about Columbus or the Islanders, Mark, as you mentioned earlier. Those teams are more worthy of getting playoff games for sure than, you name it in the NBA. And like you said, there's going to be a lot of teams in the NBA, Mark, that are just one and done, and we know it. But in hockey, we can, there's going to be some interesting matchups. If it is 24 teams, there's going to be a lot of intrigue, I think, all through the playoffs.
Right. Joe, I don't know if you remember this, but 94 when baseball had their strike in the AL West, leader at the time were the Texas Rangers. They were 10 games under 500 at that time. Okay, so.
And don't forget, 94, I don't have to tell you, who was the best team in baseball?
I don't know. The Yankees at the time. Well, actually, it was the Expos at the time. Yeah.
The Expos, and then you never heard of the Expos again, right? So it's like, and that takes away. That's why I'm going to, with COVID, and we talked about it. Several teams are up for sale and all that. Let's say we're talking today is May the 4th. May the 4th be with you. May 4th, 2021. What are teams like Oakland? Are they alive? Teams like Tampa, teams like Florida in hockey. Can we see a change of the landscape here because of COVID? Mark?
Well, look, I think that I would rather see less teams because to me, it makes the competition a little better. I mean, they talk about expansion now, even with some of these other leagues. Like some of these leagues already have 32 teams. Like how many teams are we going to have in a league? Okay. Baseball, I think, would be better off kind of taking some teams and getting rid of them. Would I like that if I was a fan of Tampa or a fan of Oakland? Now, Oakland, I'm not sure. Maybe financially, but I think you could put Oakland somewhere else. I mean, Oakland has won and they've stayed competitive. So, and even Tampa has. So, who would contract? I think would be more of the issue. And if it's just financial reasons, there's going to be a lot of teams vying for those players, and I think that would be very interesting. So I'm not against retraction. I would feel bad for the teams that happen to and the cities that happen to, but there are other ways and other leagues that can come and be interesting that you don't always have to have a major league where you have so many teams in a league, and I think it becomes ridiculous.
Logan?
Yeah, I mean, you talk about the NFL, 32 teams, and the NFL expanding, that it gets a little saturated at that point, right? Especially, and I like it now when you got, 4 teams in each division. I think it works really well. That's what I like about the NFL. So I think 32 is fine. For Major League Baseball, I think it's inevitable that they end up going to 32 teams. I think they can do it, but the problem is you can't do it when you got teams like Oakland and Tampa. So it's not going to happen yet, right? And you talk about the A's, and I feel for Oakland so much. I mean, they grabbed the Raiders from them, and that's one of the iconic fan bases. I feel so bad. And the A's, too. The A's, this is not – think about the 70s A's, the 80s. We can go on about the players who have played for the A's, and even now they're competitive, quietly competitive, really. I mean, they've done a really good job in the last few years. But it's all this financial stuff. And the Montreal scenario, I just don't know. With Tampa Bay.
So, hold on. You said the most likely league to expand is baseball, because Seattle's coming in hockey next year. Okay, so
I think the NBA would be more likely to expand, but I think that in all these, everyone's looking all the time. Now the COVID thing can affect it big time, and that's why I think we're going to be delayed a few years. But let's subtract COVID for a minute and reverse about 6 months. I think every league was interested in it, but in baseball it was tough. When you had Tampa and Oakland and these fringe teams, in basketball, I think it'd work.
Okay, so where would you go in basketball, let's say?
Well, you can go to Vegas, like we were talking about before, right?
Okay, so let's say you go to Vegas. Do you go to any other team? Any other city?
Seattle?
Okay, that's my point. Seattle's getting a team in the National Hockey League. I think National Hockey League is not going to have any other team other than Seattle. And in NBA, like you talked about, Vegas and Seattle, okay? NFL, no. Where would you go, Mark, in baseball then?
Look, I really think there's too many teams in baseball, but if you had to go somewhere in baseball, obviously we're talking about Las Vegas being the destination for some of these other sports. There isn't anybody in Vegas. Buffalo has long been rumored to have a baseball team.
He's sucking up now just because he knows.
I'm not sucking up. I don't do that. But I think that, that has a long history of minor league baseball. It's been successful. If they were going to put a team there, that's where they probably should put a team. They already had an NBA team there. They got a good hockey team. So I think that to me would make sense. But I hope they don't expand anymore right now.
All right. Well, expansion and new teams and all that. Speaking about expansion, and it felt bad. David Beckham has a team in Miami for the Major League Soccer. Before COVID, he was starting a new stadium, a new team, Inter Miami, and now Miami. I don't have to tell you guys. Mark, start off with you. They're big for soccer, or should I say football or soccer?
Yeah, I mean, definitely. But you could see just with the Hispanic population, and I think Miami's generally a party atmosphere anyway. And when you see some of these soccer games, it's one big party. So why not?
All right, Logan.
Yeah, I think, Mark, you're absolutely right. I mean, it kind of fits the mood and the atmosphere. The soccer games would do pretty well there. I have a problem, though, with some of the teams in why are the Marlins not getting support? We talk about Hispanic population. I mean, why are the Marlins not being supported?
Because you know what the truth is? Okay, when's the last time the Marlins were good at baseball? I know they won the World Series.
They won 2 World Series.
Twice. They won no division titles, but 2 World Series.
Yeah. So, but what, again, Miami is a city, a state of show me what you can do. It's like the Maple Leafs. They're tired of losing. You got to show a winning product. Yes, when they went to the World Series, it was packed. They got an amazing stadium. They got what's that stadium? It looks like a pinball machine. All right. So it's like they got an amazing stadium there. But after a year, 2 years, it wears off, like Skydome did when they had a hotel that everybody was looking in the hotel. Eduardo was looking in, thinking with the binoculars and what's Logan doing? Is he shaving or not? Like what's
All
going
right,
on here?
again, Joe, come on.
The whole thing is that, a stadium, and they have a great stadium in Miami, right? But you need to win. Derek Jeter's behind them. Can you really tell me that Miami is probably going to win this year?
No.
No, they're not gonna. They're not going to win. But there's also, you mentioned ownership. That's been a big issue in Miami for decades, right? The Marlins, the ownership. We don't have to get into the Loria stuff. How that whole thing happened. Constant fire sales. It seems like in a 3-year cycle, and now Jeter's in charge. It's a bit of a mess there, but I wish them the best.
All right, so we're going to close out this special edition. Logan, tell everybody how they could get a hold of you.
Well, I'm on every day at noon, Monday to Friday for the sports wrap. Wednesdays, timeout with Logan Lockhart at 4 o'clock Eastern. And of course, if you want me on Twitter, LGL Lockhart, barnburner.ca, articles all the time. That's all for me.
All right, Mark Everkelly.
You can find me Mondays at the mark 12:30 to 2, and on Twitter at CK Magic Sports, and website ckmagicsports.com.
All right, so stay tuned for more great programming here on the Barn Burner TV network, Zingo TV, channel 250. Remember to download the app. Also, download our Barn Burner app, available on iOS and Android. Just go to the respective store, search Barn Burner, download it today. While you download it, rate it, make a comment. Just get it. Thanks a lot, guys.
Thank you.